Chapter 1. When the tsunami hit. My husband placed his first love's younger sister onto the rescue boat and left me behind in a deflating raft. At the hospital, when I suffered a heart attack, he gave the only available chance for surgery to his first love's sister. As I lay on a hospital bed, nearing the brink of unconsciousness, he stayed by her side for 3 days and nights. Olivia, this is what you owe me and Zoe. In the past, I accepted all of this without complaint, afraid of angering him. But later, I revealed the raw, bloody truth right in front of him. Today I turned 24. Eric, I've long since stopped owing you anything. I had promised my sister I would stay with him only until I turned 24. The oxygen mask pressed tightly against my face, and the suffocating feeling finally began to recede. Lying on the cold hospital bed, my mind was blank, like the calm after a storm. The doctor frowned deeply. A moment later, and your breathing difficulty could have caused death by asphyxiation. Where is your family? Why didn't they get a doctor? My family? I had no parents. The only family I had was my husband, Eric. When the breathing difficulty began, I knelt on the ground and begged Eric to find a doctor. But he held Zoe in his arms and shot me a look of disgust. Stop pretending. Zoe's already passed out from her condition, and you still want to compete with her? Without looking back, he walked away. From the safety of his arms, Zoe lifted her head slightly and gave me a mocking smile. The irony wasn't lost on me. I missed the days when I was the one in his arms. I have no family. The doctor placed my medical report down, his expression filled with frustration and pity. You're 2 months pregnant. Did you know that? He continued. No matter how busy a family member is, they should at least check on their pregnant wife. The words hit me like a thunderbolt. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? 2 months ago, Eric stormed into my room, reeking of alcohol. In the midst of his relentless aggression, he bit into my shoulder, his eyes filled with hatred. Olivia, why wasn't it you who died back then? I gently cupped his face and whispered, yes. Why wasn't it me? Why wasn't it me, the unwanted orphan, who died, instead of his beloved first love? That ridiculous night had somehow brought an innocent life into the world. I touched my still flat stomach, a faint smile playing on my lips. I have a heart condition. I can't give birth. Please arrange for a termination. The doctor asked if I wanted to notify my family. I hesitated. Eric was probably with Zoe right now. Interrupting him might make him angry. But still, I dialed the number I knew by heart. Hello? Eric, do you like kids? My abrupt question seemed to inflame his anger even more. Through the phone, I could almost see his raised eyebrows. Zoe is still unconscious. And here you are, perfectly fine and bothering me with a call. If you're going to fake being sick, at least make it convincing. You're not going to tell me you're pregnant, are you? His tone suddenly became hesitant. I chuckled softly. No, just asking. After 20 years together, I could tell his answer from his tone alone. Doctor, let's proceed with the termination. If I waited any longer, I might have hesitated. The pregnancy was still in its early stages, and the procedure went smoothly. Chapter 2. The procedure ended with complications, leaving me on the brink of collapse on the operating table. I was unconscious for 3 days and nights. When I finally woke up, the doctors breathed a collective sigh of relief. Your condition is still critical, but thankfully, we managed to contact your family just now. They're on their way. Before the doctor could finish, the door to the ward burst open violently. When Eric's eyes landed on me lying on the hospital bed, the flicker of panic in them was quickly replaced by irritation. Olivia, you went as far as to get the doctors to lie just to get me to come here? Zoe was unconscious for 3 days and nights, and now you're imitating her? The doctor and nurse nearby seemed ready to speak, but I gestured for them to stop. I'm fine now. Thank you for your concern, I said softly. Noticing my pale complexion, Eric remained silent for a moment. Since you're fine, pack your things and get discharged. I'll come back in 10 minutes. That day, I sat on the hospital bed until midnight. He never came back. After the nurse finished her rounds and left, a phone call finally came through. Zoe has been discharged. Come back on your own. It was late at night, making it difficult to find a taxi. A sympathetic nurse allowed me to stay one more night to rest. As I put my belongings away, my phone suddenly vibrated. The call was from Master Lucas, someone I hadn't heard from in days. Looking at the name on the screen, I quickly answered. Hello? A tsunami. Radio silence. Olivia, do you even know what I've been through these past few days? My hand paused, and for once, I felt a pang of guilt. Everything's fine now, isn't it? The man on the other end sounded exasperated. I've requested a flight. I'll be back tomorrow. After hanging up, I put down my phone and took a deep breath. The next day, after leaving the hospital, I didn't rush home for the first time. Instead, I went to a flower shop and bought a bouquet of lilies. I placed the lilies in front of a gravestone, their purity contrasting against the black and white photograph of a young girl with a radiant smile. No one knew that Alice, the person Eric had been tirelessly searching for, was buried here, buried in this tranquil place by me, the murderer he blamed for her death. Alice had always disliked her materialistic family and didn't want Eric to remain trapped in the nightmares of the past. So I brought her to this quiet sanctuary, free from disturbances. The wind lifted the ends of my hair, almost as if my sister were still here, smiling softly as she braided it for me. Sister, I can't wait for Eric to remember anymore. In 10 days, I'll be 24. By then, I'll have to tell him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I opened the door to my home. The first thing I saw was Eric sitting on the sofa, his face clouded with anger. Olivia, you've gotten bold, haven't you? Staying out all night now? I explained calmly. It was too late to find a ride. Eric looked up and stared at me intently for a long moment before finally speaking. Why? Why what? Why couldn't you just ask me? Eric stormed over, grabbing the front of my shirt. Why couldn't you call me again and ask for help? You used to love calling me, begging me to do things for you. Yes. I used to love begging him for help, begging him to stay with me during thunderstorms, begging him to let me pursue my passion, begging him not to leave me alone at home on my sister's death anniversary. Chapter 3. Because I don't need to anymore. I no longer needed to ask him for anything. Eric suddenly went silent. He felt something was wrong with Olivia standing before him. She wasn't bothering him like she used to, and she was still as tolerant as always. Yet something intangible seemed to be slipping away. His grip on my collar loosened, and he stepped back, turning to the housemaid. He said, Sandra, throw out the leftovers. Apparently, someone doesn't need them anymore. I smiled faintly, nodded at Sandra, and returned to my room. Back in my room, I instinctively prepared instant oatmeal. Eric was always like this. Whenever I didn't act according to his wishes, he would resort to such tactics to remind me of my place. Whether it was throwing out food or bringing up Zoe, he always found malicious ways to make me suffer. After all, in his eyes, I was nothing more than an irredeemable sinner. My phone suddenly vibrated. I glanced down to see it was a call from Eric. There's some leftover food in the kitchen. Don't come complaining about a stomachache and calling for an ambulance again later. In a few days. It's your birthday. I'll take you out somewhere. I was a bit curious. Where? To the mountain you've always wanted to visit. Suddenly, as if realizing something, his tone turned dry. Forget it. Let's go to a hot spring instead. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Ever since the accident in the mountains years ago, neither of us had liked going back there. The one who loved going to the mountains was Zoe. So, for Zoe's sake, he was able to overcome his old fears. There's no need. I don't want to go out for my birthday this year. Are you upset? I already said I'd take you somewhere. It's unnecessary, I replied softly. I'm tired. I'm going to hang up now. Eric was busy as always. Not seeing him for several days in a row was nothing unusual. Chapter 4. Eric's parents were the epitome of busy people. From the day he was born, they hardly cared for him and only showed up on our wedding day. His mother had always opposed our marriage. To her, either Alice or Zoe was the ideal match for Eric. As soon as the door opened, Eric's mother's gaze landed on my stomach, and she frowned. Still not pregnant? You two are incredibly inefficient. I said nothing and led them to their seats. Just as the food was being served, Eric returned with Zoe in tow. Zoe's rosy complexion showed she was well taken care of. The moment she entered, she greeted Eric's parents warmly, and his mother's usually stern expression softened. Eric walked over to me, placing an arm around my shoulder. "They're here. Why didn't you call me to come home sooner?" In the past, I would have been anxious about hosting guests and would have called him to come help. But now, I stepped away from his touch and headed to the kitchen. "Zoe, I heard Eric caused you trouble while taking you out. Let me scold him on your behalf," Eric's mother said at the dining table, patting Zoe's hand. Zoe affectionately reassured her. "No, it wasn't like that. It's just my weak constitution. But Eric took great care of me." "That's good. If something had happened to you, I wouldn't know how to face your family." Eric's mother shot a glance at me as I sat down, then suddenly tapped her glass. "Olivia, Zoe is a lady of high status and also my goddaughter. It's only right for Eric to protect his godsister. As his wife, your job is to stay in your place and focus on having a child. Stop stirring up jealousy." Her sharp gaze and commanding tone left no room for argument. "A child?" Eric chuckled coldly. "I don't want my child to have a murderer for a mother." I continued eating in silence, with no intention of defending myself. Seeing my lack of reaction, Zoe smiled and slid a plate of sashimi toward me. "I should apologize, sister. That day, I acted impulsively, making Eric leave you behind. If I'd known the raft was deflating, I would have insisted you take my place." Eric cut her off coldly. "She doesn't have a heart condition. She could have gotten on by herself." I barely registered their conversation. The moment the smell of raw fish hit me, nausea churned violently in my stomach. Ugh! Unable to suppress the wave of sickness, I bent over and vomited on the floor. Eric immediately grabbed my wrist, yanking me to my feet. "Does hearing Zoe talk make you that sick?" I opened my mouth, trying to say something, but Eric's mother interrupted, her probing eyes fixed on me. "Are you pregnant?" As a mother herself, she was quick to notice the signs. "No, I'm not pregnant." The child had been there, but it didn't stay. Sandra cleaned up the mess on the floor without any intention of dealing with them further. I got up and returned to my room. As I walked away, Eric's mother's angry voice rang out behind me. "Orphans truly lack manners." No wonder she wandered off, causing Alice to fall down that slope looking for her. Chapter 5. Back in my room, I pulled out a few boxes from under the bed. Taking out a handkerchief, I began wiping each item one by one, even though they were already spotless. These were birthday gifts that my sister and Eric had once given me. My sister always gave me things I had casually mentioned liking, while Eric preferred expensive gifts, always grumbling, "I don't even want to give you this." As he shoved them into my arms with a scowl, I picked up a delicate music box. Its carvings of a knight and princess faded over the years. The door swung open abruptly, and a pair of polished leather shoes stepped into view. Zoe's gaze lowered, cold and indifferent. "Sometimes, I genuinely think you're pitiful," she said. With a swift motion, she knocked the music box out of my hands, her eyes lighting up at the sight of my stunned expression. "Your biggest supporters are gone, your protectors are gone, and now even your husband is slipping away." She glanced at the shattered music box. "You're just like that thing now, useless and pathetic." I stood frozen for a moment. The music box had been a gift from Eric. After all, unsteadily, I bent down to pick up the broken pieces. "Think whatever you want. You're her sister. Being with him doesn't matter." Zoe's eyes flared. In a few strides, she reached me and shoved me hard to the ground. "You dare bring up my sister?" She spat. "Have you forgotten it's your fault she's dead?" Her words cut deeply, even though I didn't need to hear them to know what she'd say. "You ran off and made her search for you, causing her to fall down that slope. You ruined her life and her death. She can't even be buried in the Joe family grave. Her body is still lost." "Olivia, I'm really curious. How much longer can you endure this?" Zoe's voice turned soft and mocking. "Tell me, if both of us were lying here on the ground, who do you think Eric would pick up first?" Before I could respond, she yanked us both down into the pile of shattered fragments. The porcelain shards sliced into our skin, drawing blood. The door slammed open with a loud kick. Eric stood in the doorway, his icy gaze sweeping over us. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice cold enough to freeze. "Olivia, What are you doing? He repeated. The last words forced through gritted teeth. Exhausted. I let my body relax and smiled faintly. Exactly what it looks like, I pushed her. Unexpectedly, Eric picked me up in his arms. For a moment, I was startled, but then he threw me onto the bed. Deal with it yourself, he said coldly. He then turned to Zoe, scooped her up in his arms, and left the room, pressing a hand to my aching chest. I tried to steady myself. This wasn't the first time. Why did it still hurt? Worried about infection. I rummaged for the first aid kit and clumsily began removing the shards with my left hand. Just as I thought he was gone, Eric returned. He snatched the tweezers from my hand, lifted my palm, and carefully began pulling out the fragments, one by one. Chapter 6. Under the dim yellow light, the man's profile seemed gentle. Are you really this cowardly, Olivia? You had the courage to run into the mountains back then, causing your sister's death. Why don't you have the courage now to say that Zoe set you up? I extended my uninjured hand, the blood-stained fingers pointing to the man's chest. Does your heart still hurt? He froze for a moment before answering. No, it doesn't. And do you still have nightmares? His grip on my hand tightened, and a mocking smile curved his lips. So, you do feel a shred of guilt. Don't worry. All these years, I've slept better than you have. Relieved, I lowered my hand. Good, that's all I needed to know. Now I could finally tell him. When Zoe pushed me earlier, my back hit the ground hard. As I tried to recover, the invisible hand gripping my chest tightened, as though my heart would burst out of my ribs. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead, and my vision blurred. Frantically, I fumbled for the pill bottle in the drawer, swallowing the tablets to ease the stabbing pain in my chest. Eric snatched the bottle from my hand, his brow furrowing slightly. You're seriously sick? My voice, hoarse from the pain, answered. Yes, I am. If you're sick, why don't you get treated? I almost laughed. It's too late for that. The one chance for treatment, I'd already given it away. He tossed the bottle back into my lap with a sneer. Such theatrics. Ignoring his mockery, I lay down and went to sleep without a word. An inexplicable anger flared in Eric's chest. On his way out, he accidentally stepped on a shard of uncollected glass. Amid the dim light, a small piece of paper caught his attention. He bent down to pick it up. Eric and Olivia will be together forever. The childish handwriting pierced his mind like a blade. A sharp pain flared briefly in his head as countless chaotic fragments flashed by, just beyond his grasp. At midnight, my phone rang as usual. I opened the email and played the recording. A familiar, gentle female voice echoed. Our darling Olivia. Happy birthday! You're such a grown-up now. Can you guess what Eric and I have prepared for you this year? I didn't prepare anything. A cold, childish voice retorted. All right. I know you didn't, but the beautifully wrapped gift you've been keeping by your pillow all week, that's for your sister, right? After listening to the entire recording, I unconsciously touched my face, finding it cold and damp. Today was my 24th birthday. I decided it was time to give Eric a gift. Chapter 7. A signed divorce agreement rested atop a velvet jewelry box. Eric's face seemed shrouded in an invisible frost, his features frozen in place. You want a divorce? His eyes locked onto me, his jaw tightening as a muscle twitched uncontrollably in his cheek. I calmly extended the pen toward him. Yes, let's divorce. Olivia, you killed my sister and manipulated her into leaving a will forcing me to marry you. He hissed. And now, you think you can just say divorce and end it? He snatched the pen, holding it poised above the blank signature line, yet hesitated to sign. Seeing this, I continued. Being with me only brings you pain. Divorcing me should make you the happiest person alive. Watching him finally sign his name, I felt an invisible weight lift from my shoulders, leaving me light as air. I slid the wedding ring off my finger and placed it atop my own signature, leaving only a pale, empty imprint on my skin. I'll return everything you've ever given me as soon as possible, I said softly. Eric stared at the discarded ring, a wave of overwhelming fear crashing over him like a tsunami. His chest tightened with a familiar but long-forgotten ache, but the fear was quickly swallowed by a greater rage at being abandoned. He stood abruptly, grabbed the velvet box, and hurled it violently to the ground. If we're divorced, then you don't deserve a birthday gift. The jewelry inside shattered, the box landing crookedly on its side. I glanced at the glittering fragments. It appeared to be the same piece recently purchased at an exorbitant price by a mysterious buyer. He still liked giving expensive gifts, even though I had never cared for them. We're nothing to each other now, I said, my voice calm. Why should I care about your birthday gift? From now on, I have no ties to you or your family. You should be glad, I added, cutting him off. The room fell silent, a void settling between us. Eric stood there for a long time, staring at the signed divorce papers in front of him. Then, the sound of a door slamming shut echoed behind him. His body stiffened, leaving the house. I returned to the cemetery. The graveyard was as quiet as always, the one place that had come to feel like home to me. But the sight of a half-dug grave made my mind go blank. A roaring explosion of anger and disbelief inside me. Hearing my approach, Zoe looked up, startled, only to see me rushing toward her. Olivia, so it was you who hid my sister's grave, keeping us from finding her. Before she could finish speaking, I pushed her down, leaving her sprawled in the dirt. Zoe let out a piercing scream. You're insane. How dare you do this to me? Grabbing her collar, I leaned over, my shadow engulfing her completely. For someone who had always been gentle, my voice carried a fury that shook the air. How dare you disturb Alice's grave? You knew she never wanted to be found by your family, and you still refused to let her rest in peace? The raw anger in my voice burst forth, unchecked. A force suddenly yanked me back from Zoe, and I felt someone dusting off the dirt from my shoulders. Lucas's calm voice tried to anchor me. Relax, I've already stopped them. Olivia, is this really your sister's grave? Eric arrived with Alice's family close behind, his expression both confused and accusing, his eyes fixated on me. Why is it that after all this time, only you knew where Alice's grave was? Regaining my composure, I answered. Her body lay in the morgue for 3 days while you were unconscious. Not a single person from either family showed up. What's more, she didn't want to be found by any of you. Lowering my gaze, I added, so I was the only one left to claim her body. Eric's entire body trembled as he grabbed my shoulders, his eyes burning into mine. You have no right to claim her body. You murderer! I laughed bitterly. Even now, you all still believe I killed her, don't you? Chapter 8. Do you know what my sister said to me before she died? I hadn't intended to provoke Eric's fragile heart further, but I couldn't wait any longer for him to piece things together on his own. The bloody truths, the scabbed-over wounds, they all needed to be unveiled. She said, Olivia, as a way to repay me for taking you in, promise me you'll take care of Eric and Zoe. She said, that stubborn little sister of mine will probably blame you for my death. Don't hesitate to put her in her place. She said, the doctor told me Eric can't handle any emotional distress after his surgery. So please, don't tell him too soon. Eric and Zoe looked up at me, their faces blank with disbelief. But I didn't give them time to recover. I promised her that if you didn't remember, I would tell you everything 1 year before my death. I paused, letting a bittersweet smile creep onto my face. The doctor says I won't live past 25. And today, I've turned 24. It's time you both knew the truth. Eric stood frozen, his mind blank. Zoe hesitated as she got to her feet. What are you talking about? I turned to Eric, the last thread of patience snapping within me, unable to hold back. I landed a punch on his head. All these years, you've been insufferable. You've betrayed my sister's hopes for you, and you've betrayed the love I've carried for you all these years. Eric stood motionless, taking the blow in silence. In that moment, something unlocked in his mind, memories flashing like a reel of film. He saw his sister, dressed in white and stained with red. He saw his younger self, writhing on the ground, clutching his chest and wailing in pain. He saw a pale-lipped girl holding him tightly. He saw the medics arriving with a stretcher, only to witness the girl, already on the stretcher, struggling to flip herself over and falling to the ground. He saw her cradling the boy on the ground, crying and pleading, "Save him first, please, save him." In her eyes, There was pain, reluctance, and selflessness. And finally, after so many years, Eric saw those eyes again. A man who had been standing silently for a while now stepped forward and pulled Eric away from me. Lucas turned, positioning himself protectively in front of me, and pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket to carefully wipe my hands. Tall and well-built, impeccably dressed in a suit, Lucas's sharp features were contrasted by his calm and steady voice. Don't get too worked up. Your heart can't handle any more stress. I felt drained, merely twitching my fingers in Lucas's hands to signal that I understood. Lucas looked into my eyes, his tone even and reassuring. Alice's matter is finally settled. Can you now leave with me in peace? I let out a soft mem. Even if they say you won't make it past 25, if you come back with me and receive proper treatment, you'll at least gain a few more days. I stopped caring about how much time I have left a long time ago. I replied, my head lowered in a faint smile. Lucas smiled back, his tone earnest. Every single day you have left is worth living, as long as it's for yourself. It was hard to tell whether Eric was dreaming or awake. He found himself back on that day, a simple, uneventful afternoon. He, with his heart condition, Alice's imposter sister from her wealthy family, and the orphan Alice had taken in, all three were left to their own devices, roaming the mountains. As the mountain breeze picked up, he gathered some wildflowers from the stream, but on his way back, he overheard the conversation between two girls. Do you like Eric? Alice teased playfully. Eric perked up his ears. As much as he didn't want to admit it, he was curious about Olivia's answer. The wind carried her clear, confident reply. Who would like him? That prideful jerk? Not me. Chapter 9. Youth often acts impulsively. If he had waited patiently to hear the rest, if he had caught the shyness in the girl's teasing tone, if he hadn't rushed out on a whim, Alice and Olivia wouldn't have searched for him deep into the night in the mountains. Alice wouldn't have slipped while pulling his sprained self up and fallen down the slope, her head hitting the rocks. Alice wouldn't have died from traumatic brain injuries. The man lying in the hospital bed suddenly opened his eyes. Zoe jumped up in alarm, yelling for the doctor. Quick! Eric is awake. Eric's gaze slowly focused on her face. A few seconds later, in a hoarse voice, he asked, Where's Olivia? Zoe's face paled, her earlier flush vanishing until she was as ashen as Eric. I don't know where Olivia went. Eric tried to move. He struggled to sit up, his expression blank, and turned as if to leave, when he lost his balance and collapsed to the floor. Zoe cried as she tried to help him up. Eric pushed her hand away without looking back and staggered toward the door. Where are you going? Zoe shouted in desperation. The doctors said your condition is critical. If your memory recovery isn't managed, it will worsen your cognitive impairment and mental state. And your heart. The man didn't hear her. He braced himself against the railing, quickening his steps. He had to go. He had to find Olivia. I remember, he muttered to himself. His lips trembled, and his eyes reflected a mix of pain and frenzied bewilderment. Olivia. I remember now. It was me. I'm the one who killed Alice. It wasn't Olivia. I was at the villa, directing movers to pack my belongings, when Alice was alive. All my things were kept in the small cottage we shared. After she passed and I married Eric, they were moved to the villa. Now, after 24 years, piece by piece, they were being relocated back to Alice and my true home. The visa is ready. You can leave whenever you want. Lucas stood by the window, adjusting the freshly placed irises. The sunlight danced on the petals, making them look like butterflies about to take flight. I lay on the couch, basking in the sunlight. Let's wait a little longer. I'd like to stay here for a while first. I lifted my gaze, and Lucas, resigned, turned to direct the workers to handle my belongings carefully. I tried to stand and check the progress in the garden but instead saw a figure suddenly burst through the door. Memories, now clear and sharp, crashed over the man like a tidal wave, leaving him visibly shaken. Eric stumbled forward, his trembling voice breaking the silence. Why? Why? Why did you let me hate you, curse you all these years, without ever defending yourself? The despair in his voice seemed to rip from his throat, raw and bleeding. Why didn't you tell me I was wrong? That was our sister. Eric dropped to his knees in front of me, clutching his chest like he was trying to contain the searing pain tearing him apart. She died because of me. He shouted hoarsely, his voice cracking with anguish. It was my fault. I ran off recklessly. I killed Alice. It was me. I couldn't handle the truth after my surgery, so I pushed all the blame onto you. Tears streamed down his face, staining the plush carpet beneath him. Don't touch her. A powerful shove sent Eric sprawling backward. Lucas stood coldly, his eyes boring into Eric's bloodshot ones. Let me give you another truth, Lucas said icily. The opportunity for your heart surgery? Olivia begged for it to be yours. The one with heart disease wasn't Zoe. It was Olivia. Before Eric could respond, Lucas dragged him out. As Eric struggled, Lucas's biting words rang in his ears. A coward who only knows how to shift blame. No wonder Olivia doesn't love you anymore. Chapter 10. After resolving the entanglements of the past 24 years, Lucas took me aboard a plane bound for a foreign land. The private jet flew smoothly, and I hardly felt any discomfort in my heart. Sitting beside me, Lucas draped a blanket over my lap, carefully smoothing out the creases. You don't need to feel pressured by my care for you, Lucas said calmly as he adjusted the neck pillow behind me. First, I fell in love with the delicate words you wrote. Then, I fell in love with you. He looked up at me, smiling gently. You can feel safe accepting a love that's normal. I didn't know how to respond to such love. I had always enjoyed writing stories. After Eric cut off my work opportunities, I spent my days at home typing away at my keyboard. By chance, a company approached me about collaborating with them. During one of our talks, an employee let slip that their boss was particularly fond of my writing and insisted on collaborating at least once, claiming he wouldn't rest in peace otherwise. A childish sentiment, I thought, until I met the tall, serious man in real life and realized the disparity between his demeanor and that sentiment. Day by day, I could feel Lucas's affection hidden beneath his polite and gentlemanly exterior. But when I revealed that I was married, his response was, I can wait, Olivia. I'll wait until you decide to leave him. It was a sincere declaration of love, but I dared not accept it. I was a dying woman. My congenital heart condition had gone untreated for too long. The doctor said I wouldn't live past 25. Even with surgery, the odds of survival were a mere 5%. I turned to Lucas and said, I'll only hold you back. He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his restrained love finally surfacing. I'm not afraid. An overseas medical team conducted a late-night examination, only to confirm the earlier diagnosis. I wouldn't live past 25. I would die soon. Even if the low-probability surgery succeeded, my time would still be limited. Lucas stood on the hospital balcony, repeatedly opening and closing a pack of cigarettes. Before deciding against it, I slipped out of bed, barefoot, and walked to his side. I patted his head and forced a smile. It's nothing new. Why be sad now? Looking at my cheerful face, he bent down and carried me back to bed. No surgery. Then? I'm afraid of the pain. I don't want to suffer anymore. Noticing his somber expression, I pinched his cheek lightly. All right. All right. The seaside here is beautiful. Let's go for a walk. He froze for a moment, then picked up his phone. All right. I'll arrange it. By evening, the beach had cooled. The sand no longer burned underfoot, and the seawater felt soothingly lukewarm. The salty sea breeze tousled my hair as I walked barefoot on the soft sand. The waves lapped at my feet. Lucas walked ahead of me, barefoot, kicking aside any sharp objects in my path. I lowered my head, stepping into his footprints, feeling an unusual sense of peace and amusement. He suddenly stopped, and I bumped into his back. He turned to steady me. Look ahead, he said. The sunset bathed the sea in golden light, a shimmering display of nature's beauty. I spread my arms wide, embracing the man before me as though I were embracing the ocean. The dusk deepened, his eyes as vast as the sea, and I felt myself drifting in their turbulent waves. Do I finally mean something to you? I asked. You always have. Life is fleeting, but I needed an embrace as certain as the wind. The man raised his brows, and I fell into a warm, steadfast hug. His voice was as gentle as ever. It's worth it. I've waited for this moment. Chapter 11. When the branches were weighed down with snow, Eric was granted a meeting with me. Eric looked defeated. The last time we met, his hair was jet black. Now it was streaked with gray, wrapped in a thick blanket. I didn't feel like talking to this man who had brought me so much pain in the past. You ran out that day because of what I said, I murmured, my voice cold. I gave you a healthy heart in return. We've been even for a long time. Eric pressed his fingertips to his chest, his tone desperate. Let me give it back to you, please. I'll give you my heart. Just don't die. His lifeless gray eyes begged me, as if clinging to a final shred of hope. I shook my head, a faint, bitter smile playing on my lips. Isn't my death exactly what you've wanted all along? My words struck Eric like a thunderbolt. His face twisted in anguish, his chest heaving with guilt and despair that seemed ready to shatter him. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We promised we'd stay together, safe and sound, forever. Weren't you the one who broke that promise first? I blinked slowly, maneuvering my wheelchair to distance myself from him. So, please live with the pain and guilt of carrying this healthy heart for the rest of your days. The conversation ended abruptly as Lucas signaled the guards to drag Eric away. Sunlight spilled across my fingertips, making my pale skin look almost translucent. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. I clutched my heart and leaned back in the wheelchair. Lucas pushed me inside, where the blazing fireplace warmed my cold feet. Do whatever you want to get revenge on my behalf. Just don't let them die, I said lazily, extending my hand toward the fire, letting the warmth spread from my fingertips to my heart. Does it not bother you? Lucas asked, his gaze cautious. They've had years of wealth and comfort to ease their conscience. I've already been more than kind, I replied, my voice detached. If my actions weren't enough, I'll explain it to my sister myself when I see her on the other side. All sounds seemed to blur, except for the crisp crackling of the firewood. I gazed at the distant snowy mountains, memories of our childhood promise floating back to me. The three of us had vowed to climb a mountain and watch the snow together. Lucas stroked my hand gently, his expression solemn. They chose not to seek the truth. They refused to face what really happened. They preferred to retreat into their denial. He said firmly, they were the ones who hurt you all this time. Lowering his head, he pressed his forehead to mine and whispered warmly, Olivia, you did nothing wrong. My eyes shimmered, and I gripped his hand tightly. Those words, I had waited years to hear them. He raised his head and placed a tender kiss on my forehead. Tomorrow is the launch of our book. Let's go together, shall we? Sunlight streamed through the window, scattering golden light across the floor. I wrapped my arms around his neck and buried my face in his shoulder. All right. If I didn't see it now, I wouldn't get another chance. The next morning, the steady beep of medical machines filled the room as a rush of medications was pumped into my body. It was no use. The doctor stepped out, shaking his head regretfully at Lucas. Olivia was gone. The gentle, intelligent woman who had endured so much cruelty and hardship would never open her eyes again. There was no time for grief. Lucas still had unfinished business. In the quiet of the nursing home, nurses fed the restrained Eric, who struggled weakly against them. Lucas sat on a nearby sofa, watching him in silence. From his briefcase, Lucas pulled out stack after stack of documents. Chapter 12. These are Olivia's medical reports. Lucas began, tossing the files onto the table in front of Eric, whose vacant eyes stared ahead in a daze. Her condition worsened every year. As her husband, you never even noticed. Eric sat motionless, his expression hollow. And here, Lucas said, flipping to another document, is her hospital report after the tsunami rescue. Did you know? She was pregnant. The words hit Eric like a thunderclap. His pale lips trembled uncontrollably, and tears began rolling down his face in heavy drops. But it seems, Lucas continued coldly, that after she called you, she decided to terminate the pregnancy. Lucas finished flipping through the stack of papers, his tone indifferent. He walked over to the table and poured himself a glass of water. As the water filled the glass, Lucas spoke with cruel detachment. You've already lost everything, Eric, and now you remember it all. Turning around with the glass in hand, he added, so stay here and rot as the worthless man you've become. On his way out, Lucas gave firm instructions to the medical staff. Keep an eye on him. Don't let him die. Zoe's years of fabricating Olivia's condition and stealing her credit were riddled with inconsistencies. Everyone knew something was wrong, but no one dared admit their own complicity in the lies. When Lucas found Zoe, the once glamorous debutante was working in a flower shop. She froze when she saw him, then quickly wrapped 2 large bouquets and handed them over. These are lilies. They were Alice's favorite. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed over the second bundle. And these are Iris's, Olivia's favorite. Her hands were red and swollen from thorn pricks. Zoe clumsily rubbed her palms. A nervous tick. Yes, she muttered, more to herself than to Lucas. I was jealous of Olivia when we were kids. Alice only needed to apologize to stay with the family, but she chose to leave, to take Olivia with her, leaving me behind as if I didn't matter. Her voice broke. Later, Eric, who I secretly loved for so long, only ever approached me despite Olivia. Tears welled up in Zoe's eyes as she whispered, "But Olivia never did anything wrong. It was us. We were the ones who failed her." Lucas held the flowers silently, his gaze heavy on her. After a pause, he finally spoke. "Be grateful. Alice once made me promise to look after her foolish little sister. Without Alice's wish, Zoe's fate would have been far grimmer." Olivia's grave lay beside Alice's, their headstones surrounded by vibrant flowers and neatly trimmed grass. The breeze carried a faint scent of greenery. Lucas knelt down, placing the irises gently before Olivia's grave. His gaze lingered on her smiling photo etched into the stone. After a long silence, he murmured, "They've lost everything. They're living lives worse than death. Olivia, will you blame me for this?" He sat down by the grave, the wind rustling his coat. "Or perhaps you'd be relieved?" His hand caressed the black and white photo, his voice soft. "I've kept all your works safe. Everyone will know there was once a brilliant author named Olivia." There was no response, only the sound of the wind. A lone daisy floated through the air, landing in his palm. Looking toward the distant blue sky, Lucas whispered, "I miss you. When will you visit me in my dreams? I want to see you." Time seemed to blur, and suddenly, a faint, slender figure appeared in the distance. She smiled at him, her voice like a melody. "Thank you. I miss you, too," she added. Lucas stared at her, murmuring, "In the next life, will we meet again?" The figure flickered like an unstable image on an old screen. Lucas instinctively reached out, his fingers grasping at nothing but air. He leaned against the gravestone, his body trembling as he woke abruptly. It had all been a dream. The stars shimmered faintly in the night sky, and he was alone once more. In the days that followed, Lucas visited countless places Olivia had once dreamed of seeing. One day, he heard of a mountaintop temple known for its powerful blessings. Braving the snow, he climbed to the summit. Step by step, he reached the main hall. Kneeling on the prayer mat with reverence, "May the merciful Buddha grant Olivia a long and healthy life in her next reincarnation." He prayed, bowing deeply. May her heart beat for herself this time. May she find peace, happiness, and love.